stress, and burnout are significant concerns for businesses across Canada. According to a recent study by Mental Health Commission of Canada, 40% of Canadians have experienced burnout in their current job, highlighting the urgent need for proactive strategies to support employee mental health and well-being.
I think the reasons for that are the fact there's multiple things in play in society today. The first being that there's much greater neurodivergence in our workplaces. And when you think about that, there's many different factors driving that.
Now, Vaishali, people often confuse stress and burnout as overlapping mechanisms. How do you think burnout is different from stress, and how can people manage with it differently as well?
The number one thing that really is causing stress, like it or not, are management styles, leadership styles that haven't yet evolved or haven't been given the right development path to evolve to manage this kind of complexity.
Hi there, business leaders and HR professionals. Are you prioritizing the mental well-being of your employees and creating a workplace where they can actually thrive? Hello and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast, where we explore the critical connection between employee well-being and organizational success, providing insights and strategies for building a thriving and resilient workplace. Workplace stress and burnout are significant concerns for businesses across Canada. According to a recent study by Mental Health Commission of Canada, 40% of Canadians have experienced burnout in their current job, highlighting the urgent need for proactive strategies to support employee mental health and well-being. Joining us today is Vaishali Joshi, founder of ORA Human, a workplace wellness agency that empowers professionals, leaders, and teams to manage stress, navigate change, and build mental agility. Vaishali's expertise in mental wellness and her passion for creating thriving workplaces makes her a valuable resource for businesses across Canada. So let's dive in. Vaishali, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you.
It's our pleasure to have you. Vaishali, your expertise in workplace wellness and your dedication to helping individuals and teams thrive in today's challenging, environments makes you an invaluable resource. So thank you so much for coming here and doing this, first of all. We're very eager to learn from your insights and understand how businesses can create a workplace where employees genuinely feel supported, engaged, and empowered. Now, Vaishali, creating a psychologically safe work environment, it's crucial for employee well-being and productivity. How can companies foster a culture where employees feel safe, supported, and empowered to speak up, share their ideas, and contribute their best work without the usual fear of judgment or retribution? How do you suggest that?
Yeah, I think that's become a far more challenging endeavor now more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And for a number of reasons, if I may share, I think we're dealing with a far more complex environment when it comes to managing people and empowering people. And I think the reasons for that are the fact there's multiple things in play in society today.
Mm-hmm.
The first being that there's much greater neurodivergence in our workplaces. And when you think about that, there's many different factors driving that. In a good way, there's more unmasking of individuals coming forward with ADHD, autism. We're creating talent plans, which is a terrific thing. Companies are creating entire talent management programs for that kind of neurodivergence. We're also seeing menopausal women coming forward now, whereas I've been in offices traditionally for the last 2 decades where there was a lot of masking of that, and now there's an understanding that there is some neurodivergence involved with that, and that we actually do need to help women going through that. Now you put that together with 5 generations in the workplace, and you've got lots of fun happening, right? So what happens with psychological safety is that in an environment that's so complex, it's really about psychological safety is where we actually look at how much trust do our people feel when they're working for us. And trust is built on you and me having a common space. Right? Which really has to do with how do we relate to each other. If we feel that we have common ground, there's a great fertile ground for trust. Right? But with all of these different notions or different factors, diversity has led to reduced trust. People don't feel safe, especially coming out of the pandemic right now. So I advocate to leaders that it is more so now more than ever before the importance of doing the right type of social listening. Now, social listening is not a new concept in the business world.
But the right type is very
The right
important.
type is because you really do want to look at your employee demographic with the various microcultures you have in place.
Right.
For example, if you've got a lot of Gen Ys and Gen Zs working in your environment, you probably want to do some social listening dedicated to those spaces, create the safe space for those individuals to come in and speak about what do they think, what do they like, what don't they like, what do they thrive on, what's motivating, what inspires them. Because I think this is where the ideation does come out in a safe space. When you have done that kind of social listening where people are put together with like for like, then you can start to think about constructive, organized forums for cross-cultural listening. Right. But when we put everybody in one room like we used to and say we're listening to our people, I think that's where you find that a lot of people are not safe enough right now. Right. Especially with the 5 generations in place, you will see that a lot of the younger generation will not speak up because they haven't really fully understood their context yet. Right. So I think these are 2 ways of listening that I think leaders can institute fairly easily, actually, in terms of how it is that we engage employees. And the third thing I would say as a strategy is to put in place proactive human skill development plans, which I will talk about, a little later when we get into those types of subjects. But I think that nobody really got a real good human skill in education. I didn't. Nobody ever said to me, this is how you resolve conflict.
Exactly. It was not taught in school.
No.
It was not a part of the traditional education that we get.
But when you think about this stage in our lives where we are seeing this complexity and we are seeing a low level of psychological safety, I think that giving people that education is saying, I care about how you show up and I'm going to help you get there.
Exactly. It's the small thing that matters, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Great. That's a very valuable perspective, Vaishali. Open communication, trust, and respect are essential for building a psychologically safe workplace where employees can genuinely thrive. Now, workplace stress can stem from various sources, right, impacting employee well-being and productivity. What do you think, Vaishali, are some of the biggest stress triggers at work, and how can leaders effectively identify and manage these triggers to create a more positive and work environment? Because a lot of listeners right now, they are small business owners or people who have just started out in their journeys. What would you say to them?
Yeah. I think before I address what are those key stress triggers in the workplace, it always makes me feel as if we're kind of boxing stress in the workplace, and there really isn't anything else happening around that. So contextually, as a society, we're in a place today where the stress triggers in our lives in general are at a very heightened point in time. A lot of us are struggling financially. All of us are dealing with inflation. Everybody is questioning their financial safety. So when I come into the workplace or I leave the workplace, this thing is on me, right? Parental stress right now is at an all-time high. Whether you're managing young kids or you're managing teenagers on devices, I know that I bring that into my workspace. So it's really important as a leader, at least for me, when I'm managing my teams, it was really important for me to understand when this person is arriving at work, I can't say that that's none of my business. Right? And so I need to make sure that they are aware that I care about what's happening to them. Now, in the workplace today, given some of the things that we just talked about, the complexity of the demographics we're dealing with, the number one thing that really is causing stress, like it or not, are management styles, leadership styles that haven't yet evolved or haven't been given the right development path to evolve to manage this kind of complexity.
I'd agree.
Right? Traditional leadership models are not working. And we know this is not working because relatability has become a huge issue. So making sure that our leaders are given the right tools from a human skill development to show the kind of empathy, to teach people on their teams how to drive problem solving and conflict management. If we don't give them those tools, then their styles remain pretty traditional, and that's not working. And a sub-note to that is the fact that it is our middle management right now that is experiencing the highest levels of burnout.
Exactly.
And these are the individuals that are fending upward and downward. And their burnout rates right now is standing about 56% by one estimate, right? And so if I'm a person reporting to a middle manager, likely I'm not always reporting to a senior manager. My experience, my employee experience really depends on that person's ability to show up a certain way and calm it down and keep it organized and keep it clear and open and inviting, but who teaches our managers to do this. I always tell people that, in my career journey, it wasn't until I got to a certain point where I earned a certain title, where one day somebody said, "Hey, we're sending you away on a leadership development program," and it was a big ticket item, and I thought, "Oh, great, cool," and then I went and I came back and I was thinking, why didn't anybody teach me this when I was 22 years old? Right. Because I think I could have saved you and me a lot of grief, right? So I think that's one of the biggest stress triggers is leaders who don't know how to contend with what's happening to their people and not being given the tools to do that. I think people come into the workplace with a much higher level of fear. So for me, this is like a second. There's fear of failing, there's fear of speaking up, as we just talked about, there's fear of not making ends meet. So coming in, there's a big I don't know and I don't control. Right. And that feeling of helplessness or fear is what they're bringing in. That's stressful.
Helplessness is what I'd say as well. Yeah.
So now it's stress over the real work stress that I'm bringing into the workplace. The voices that tell me that I don't control my environment. Right? So I think that these are two stress triggers that we're dealing with. And the third I'll say right now is our fear of the future. Right? So are our policies, our processes, our infrastructure, our business models adapted to what AI is going to do in our workplace? Right. So if we're not, we're just kind of making do, but we don't know what tomorrow looks like. And so I think that these are some of the key sources of stress, and that just happens in the box at work.
Right.
Right?
Wow, those are some very important and valuable considerations, Vaishali. Addressing workload imbalances, fostering clear communication, and promoting work-life balance can significantly reduce workplace stress and enhance employee well-being. And it'll also make you focus on the things that actually matter instead of just feeling helpless and trying to make your ends meet.
I had somebody give me a really good example yesterday. I think people will relate to this. So a lot of people have been sent home to work virtually. And so obviously companies have really leaned in to give them the right technology tools, right? And one of the biggest technology tools that was seen as important was the ability to instant message, right? So the Teams or whatever it is. And I just had somebody yesterday telling me what a big source of stress that one tool is for them, that instant messaging functionality, because not everybody was taught how to use the tool effectively in communication. So what happens is here you are working on a spreadsheet and you got a conference call coming, you're trying to prepare for that, and this thing's going ping, ping, ping. Now, one person knows to give full context in a chat, and one person's like, "Hi." And then you notice, "Oh, hi, do you need something?" Then there's a long pause. And there's a lot of distraction.
Going back and forth.
So there's so much distraction in a work environment happening, and that actually elevates stress because it affects your productivity. Right? So...
Wow, that I think every listener is going to relate specifically from this episode, because we've all been there, right? We experience this in our daily lives and we've all experienced this. How do we draw that fine line, especially when we're entering work? Where do we leave our personal, imbalances aside and say that, oh, the clock has struck 9, now's the time for work? Does it actually work that way?
No. Because we're not machines. This is the biggest problem. I wish we could. But traditionally, we've never been able to leave our problems behind. And we may be silenced in the workplace when it comes to speaking about illnesses, personal relationships, children. We don't bring those into our workspace, right? It depends on where we work. But I will say, and this is why ORA Human came to be, is that saying that we are actually self-empowered. You can self-empower yourself to build a mental fitness practice that allows you to stay present. That doesn't mean that the problems go away, but your ability to have the tools you need to observe yourself in any given moment and say, okay, what is serving me in this conversation right now? Right? It's not that I left all my problems out there, but how do I stay present is really around how I manage my capacity and energy. And every individual today, regardless of in which organization you work, is acutely aware and able to manage their mental capacity, their emotional capacity. But we don't teach our children, and we don't teach our youth, and we don't teach young professionals coming into the workforce how to do that. And yet we are expecting them to embrace the changes that we are throwing out there. We talked about stress triggers. There was one big one that I forgot to say, is change fatigue. We have been through as a society tremendous amounts of change. And now organizations are racing to keep up and keep relevant.
Right.
And so what are we doing? We're pushing change down in the organization so fast, and change fatigue is a huge source of stress as a result of that. So coming back to your question is, can we empower our people? Can we give them learning development paths? Part of just, hey, if you're a PM, you got to do your PMP. Your project manager, here's some certifications. Well, likewise,
Right.
are we giving them learning development pathways around managing their mind? Because that will go a long way
Right.
in them feeling that they own their own mental health in all of this chaos, right? So this was one of the reasons we actually came up with ORA Human.
Wow. And I think mind management shouldn't just be restricted to the workplace, as you correctly said. It should be something that is taught in schools at a very early age so that people know how to deal with it. Now, burnout is a growing concern in today's fast paced work environment with significant costs for both individuals and organizations. Hi there, business leaders and HR professionals. Are you prioritizing the mental well being of your employees and creating a workplace where they can actually thrive? Remember, investing in workplace wellness is not only the right thing to do, but also a smart business decision that can lead to increased productivity, engagement, and retention. All right, we'll be right back with insights on how mental agility can help individuals and teams thrive in today's fast changing world. Stay tuned to learn more about the strategies for building resilience and navigating uncertainty.
Hey, you think you know UPS? Yeah, that's us. Everybody knows that. You know what you didn't know? This. Okay, try to keep up. Ocean, us. Ground, rail, air, so us. Guess who? Us. Customs cleared, borders cleared, done. Us. You still with me? Wait for it. Boom. Us. Intelligent, automated, fulfillment. Us. Yep. Healthcare too. Digital your thing? Yeah. Well, book it, ship it, track it. You feeling me yet? Yep. That's all us. That's all UPS.
At IHG Hotels and Resorts, we're in the business of you.
We're here to help you plug in,
connect and recharge,
make an impression,
and meet with confidence.
With 19 brands built for business,
your business gets even more rewarding.
With an award-winning loyalty program at 6,000 IHG hotels and resorts worldwide.
Welcome back, listeners. Let's dive into the practical strategies for developing mental agility and how it can empower leaders and employees to adapt and succeed in a world of constant change. Now, Vaishali, people often confuse stress and burnout as overlapping mechanisms. How do you think burnout is different from stress, and how can people manage with it differently as well?
Right. So I think that's a very good question because not everyone understands that stress and burnout look and feel very different.
Right.
Normally, when we are stress is good to some extent. Like good stress, we all need to meet the deadlines, to achieve the things that we want. Everything that relates to planning our intended direction requires a certain amount of pressure or stress, right? But when we are being pushed through many doors of meeting timelines or expectations that we don't fully grasp how to, that now starts creating bad stress. We're not being given the tools to do what we're being asked to do. We're kind of scrambling, trying to fake it till you make it, right? And then we keep doing that. And then you start getting into a sustained stress period. So that starts first as showing as I'm feeling overwhelmed today, right? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I am not breathing very well today. Whatever, my mind is racing. That starts to escalate to stress, a bad stress. And when sustained periods of stress continue unattended, where people are not practicing a decompression practice, or they're not meditating, or they're not working out, and they're just letting it pound on, right? And when their physical health starts to suffer, it takes sometimes months for that to really accumulate. And then you start seeing conditions of anxiety. Right now, this is where I can't sleep. My heart's racing. I'm having tunnel vision, in the sense of if somebody asks me a question, there's only one way in my mind to address that. I'm not open to listening to what other people's perspective on it. That's when anxiety comes into place, because you just want to get to the end game. And you can't be creative, and you can't problem solve, and you certainly can't actively listen. So sometimes that shows up as anxiety for some people, right? And then when anxiety starts to really act up, you might see people show up with depression. Now you're getting into the mental illness space. Burnout is, while all of that sounds like a very active state, where I talked about your mind racing, you might be shaking, you're not breathing very well, you're talking really fast. Burnout is when the body shuts down. The mind starts to just shut down and say, I'm tired. So burnout is actually is full of inertia. It's a state where you might be a lot more quieter than usual. You may withdraw. You can't take any additional stimulus. And so burnout is, as I said, like it's 46% of our middle management is experiencing that state already. So they've gone through a number of stages before they got there, right? Project managers or individual contributors today, who we need a lot of these days, the people who run the show without formal authority, are showing also 50% types of rates in burnout, because they're not even formally given teams to run in terms of compensation and performance. They're just expected to make results happen. This has been my bread and butter for 2 decades. It's what I did, right? So I think that burnout is a stage where you really, this is where you see people might have already gone on stress leave, or they can't because they're afraid of losing their jobs. But it's it's like you've just fallen to the deep end of the ocean and landed on the sandbed at the bottom. And you're looking up, and it's a long way up. So that's the difference between burnout and stress.
Thank you so much for educating me and all our listeners. Now, if you can help us understand what is mental agility, and how can leaders and, the middle management, as you correctly said, develop that, and what are some key strategies for navigating uncertainty, managing stress and maintaining a mindset that is not harmed by the negative auras around us or inside of us.
Yeah. So we talked about change fatigue.
Right.
Change is not going to stop. Recently I heard a beautiful quote by Sadhguru. He says, change is imminent. If you're not changing, you're not living. Right. And so change is going to continue. Whether you like it or not, it will continue coming at you.
It's the only constant.
It may come at you. You may feel it's coming at you if your perception is that of adversity. If you perceive everything that's been put on your desk as adversity, that's your mindset now, then you're going to naturally push, or as they say, your fight or flight will trigger every time that you perceive that kind of adversity. But change will continue to happen. And so our relevance, or your relevance, or my relevance in our respective fields really depends on our ability to stay agile, our ability to not perceive the next thing coming as adversity. And there's a really great keynote I do, which is, the journey from adversity to adventure, and having an adventure mindset. And Korn Ferry actually just yesterday put out a beautiful article where they talked about how do we get our people to perceive opportunity again. There used to be a time in the happy times where we perceived opportunity, a learning opportunity. Nowadays, you put a learning opportunity and it's more work. The reason I feel this way is because I lack mental and emotional capacity. Right? And when that happens, like I'm full, I'm to the top. How will I learn? How will I flex? Right? So mental agility is the ability to pivot your thoughts, your emotions, the plans you ever made that you thought were going to stand up something and are not going to, right? Your ability to pivot quickly and be able to look at something from a point of adventure or opportunity as opposed to adversity. And your ability to do that in every conversation, in every interaction, in every endeavor is actually a practice you develop. It's about understanding how you use your full mind. So the way that we talk about energy management, today people run from the idea of energy management. I'll have you know that very successful organizations like SAP, Autodesk, they've been doing this for their people for a long time. They understand the importance of energy management. Right. People need to be given back control of their capacity. And while organizations will say, well, that's your personal thing, you can leave it at that, but that's the level of capacity they're bringing into your workplace. So maybe you care about the capacity they're bringing in. So the ORA Experience is our flagship program, and it was really coming from a place of 2 decades of corporate work that I did. I've been on that journey right from the age of 22. And climbing that ladder and going through the personal adversities I was going through, I began to realize at the age of 30, 35, that there was a need to really read yourself better, understand the full potential of your mind. And it's not just your IQ and the degree you did and the academic path you took professionally, but that there is an intelligence that comes from cognition, ability to use the front of your brain, the ability to decide flight or fight, not just react to it. Your mind may tell you to run, but maybe running isn't the right thing in this moment. So it's the ability to observe that. And then letting go of the things that create your judgments, your biases, because, yesterday that person did blah, 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 and all that noise that's in your head. But today you have to work with that same person. So giving people the tools to build agility and resilience. We use this word a lot. People go, but I don't know how to get resilient. What does that even look like? There are specific practices, both in the space of mindset training and mindfulness. We can give this to our people as part of their health management plan. We can give it to them proactively, not wait for them to go on stress leave and get a psychologist and get a massage and do everything else that we do. It's been a very reactive stance we've had on mental health. And so ORA Human programs are designed for teams and people to say, no, you know what, I'm taking back control of this, so that I recognize my stress triggers, so I see my responses in them, so I understand that I can pivot. And this is how I do that. Giving them those tools is empowering them to build the agility that you want in your workplace, because you're not going to stop changing, right? So you want them to drive change, give them some tools to actually get driving their own change first.
Wow. You also mentioned Sadhguru. Sadhguru has also been a part of my life. He's helped me personally overcome a lot of challenges. And now I actually see like an overlap with what you were saying and what he's saying. I'm very intrigued, Vaishali. How did you get into doing what you're doing today? Is this something that you've always wanted to do? I'd love to know the story behind it.
Yeah, no, I didn't grow up thinking that I was going to do this. Like I would say even every Indian child, I was pushed into academics very strongly. And you were going to make something of yourself, and you were going to get that degree and that postgraduate degree. And because you were a woman, by the age of 30, you were married and had 3 children, and it was check, check, check. Right? But instead, in that endeavor, I became aware that I had a lot of anxiety. My journey into starting ORA Human was driven by my own acknowledgement of my own anxiety and how it is indoctrinated into us. So going through some huge personal changes at the age of 30, coming to the sense of, oh, I checked off all the boxes, but things are not going exactly as it was supposed to by the book. Why isn't that? And then watching yourself flounder in that adversity and thinking nobody taught me how to deal with this. So for me, I think that turning point was at about 30, when I went through a major crisis. And I realized that I needed to get a handle over my own self up here and read myself better, is when the first time somebody actually walked me into the practice of breath work and meditation. And being the disciplined fiend that I am, I embraced it completely and practiced it as I was supposed to. And I began to see fundamental shifts in my emotionality, fundamental shifts in my choice of language, fundamental shifts in the way that people were being attracted to me now for various reasons. And when I saw that shift, and that's what actually powered my corporate career through my 30s, things were happening naturally. I wasn't having to put in so much of my anxious effort into things. I wasn't obsessing so much. Things were happening naturally because I was invested in staying present in the moment. So that practice led to doing many other things. I'm a teacher of presence now through Eckhart Tolle. I'm a practitioner of Art of Living as well as Isha. I have done my Alliance Yoga certification because I wanted to understand alignment of my physicality with my mind. All of these things were done as a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
But what I loved about it is it changed my trajectory as a people leader. It really transformed the way that people wanted to follow and work with me, how they were willing to fail and win with me. It changed my perception of what it means to inspire people. And I think these are the things that our leaders today could really leverage in terms of helping their people go through change. So that's been my story. I think triggered by a lot of my personal adversity, but finding out that when you get a handle over your mind and your emotions, and learning to read yourself like a book, and being able to read the room better, you really do set yourself up for a completely different daily experience.
Wow, your story is very inspiring. But if there's one key lesson that you'd want our listeners to take away from your personal story, what would it be?
It would be that I would like to see more people take it in their own hands to have a mental practice of some sort. We are in a society where we've been so physically oriented, so going to the gym, looking good a certain way. The physicality has always been a big part of our conversation. You put on a little weight, someone's going to make a comment about it, right? Yes. If you lose a little weight, oh my God, you feel this. Yeah. But the thing is that nobody actually says, but what are we doing to improve ourselves cognitively, mentally, emotionally? So I say to people today, while you wait for your workplaces to pivot and understand and embrace the message that I've given you today, you actually do have avenues, learning pathways that you can start to self-empower yourself and change your own daily experience. That is the one message I give regardless of what demographic we talk to.
Wow. If I were to give you a time machine right now, Vaishali, would you go back or in the future? And what is that one thing that you'd change?
I would change the fact that I would have probably wanted this education given to me when I was definitely in high school, where we are trying desperately to find our place, and we end up making some of the biggest mistakes in our life because we haven't been taught these human skills from a young age, right? And I think, if anything, I don't tend to regret. I tend to live more in the present and look ahead. Right. But if I say, and I look at my 14-year-old son today, I think these are the skills that I would have probably wanted given to me, and I want to see more youth given these skills as well.
Definitely, and it can start from home as well, right? I'm sure that you've taught your children the meaning of and the importance of managing your mind at a very early age from the home. I urge all the listeners to do the same as well. Before we wrap up and before we let you go, Vaishali, if there's one actionable advice you would want our listeners to take away from our entire conversation today, what would it be? What should they do after listening to this podcast? Go ahead.
Develop a self-awareness, one thing you do every day to reflect on yourself each day. That can be as you take a walk.
Right.
Take a walk. And when you do, try not to talk to anybody. Try to shut off external stimuli. Our biggest problem today is that our sympathetic system, which is our active system, the one that says, I think, I do, I think and do all day, is overactive, right? It's overworked. This is why we get stressed. Our parasympathetic system has so much power to decompress, but we don't give it a chance. The only time it decompresses is if you have a good sleep.
Right.
But you can actually activate it any day, every moment. So I say, look for the one thing, two things. Journaling is one example. Walking is another. Quiet walking, listening to music. Right. Have a meaningful conversation for even 10 minutes with your spouse. Right. And a meaningful means not talking about the world around you, but truly saying, hey, how are you feeling, is also a way to actually activate your parasympathetic system. Find ways to bring more power to that system than just the think and do and perform.
Wow, that's a very powerful message, Vaishali. Prioritizing mental wellness and fostering a supportive workplace culture and also a personal culture, I'd say it's very important to having a balanced, well-functioning life. All right, thank you so much, Vaishali, for coming here and gracing us with your presence. We loved this conversation.
Thank you. I really appreciate the forum and the platform to come and showcase what is really important for our people today.
Thank you. That was an insightful conversation with Vaishali Joshi, founder of ORA Human, on the importance of workplace wellness and the impact of burnout and the power of mental agility in navigating change and achieving success. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. We appreciate your continued support. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and more expert insights and resources that can help your business thrive. You can also visit our website, CanadianSME.ca, for valuable information and tools. A very special thank you to our podcast partners, RBC, UPS, IHG Hotels and Resorts, and Google for their ongoing commitment to empowering small businesses in Canada. Until next time, keep innovating and striving for success. We'll see you in the next episode. Kripa Anand signing off.